You may have been wondering when the next Game Plunge episode is coming out. Well, during the summer holidays I'm putting that on hold to work on my own games, which I will then show you right here. In this series, one game a week, I'll make a game in a single week, which I'll then discuss here as sort of a post-mortem. This week's game is Joel's Journey. I always enjoy making games with a puzzle element in them. This time I wanted to make a little twist on the puzzle platformer genre, where you don't control the player, but you control the platforms. Since I'm not a really good artist, I decided to go for a minimalistic design, similar to Thomas Was Alone.
Thomas was alone. What a weird first.
The first thing I ran into was showing the player when the character was going to jump, while simultaneously making it clear that he wasn't controlling the character. Early builds had arrows pointing upwards to show the player that the character was going to jump. On top of that, I had the commands laid out on a bar, which made it look like Guitar Hero. This resulted in players trying to time the commands correctly and getting confused when nothing really responded to their input. I quickly got rid of this bar and I changed the command icons from arrows to meaningless figures. This made it a bit more clear that you weren't supposed to press any buttons to make the player jump. This is also part of the reason I made the title screen the way it is. Not only is it fun to look at, but it also shows a bit of the mechanics before the game even starts. Then came the task of slowly introducing the main mechanic of the game, placing platforms. I admit that using text as a tutorial is pretty sloppy, but I didn't have a lot of time to make a proper tutorial. I purposely made the character go to the left here, both to give the player some more time to think, and to show that jumping against a wall changed the character's direction. It's a very simple puzzle to introduce the idea of placing platforms. The second level is also part of the tutorial. Here I decided to show you some of the basic controls for the game. The level also had to be large enough to move the camera around. Level 2 requires you to fully understand the placing and removing of platforms. I tried to make sure the players understood this so that I could use it in puzzles later on. I started out by locking the player up in a small room, which could only be opened if you removed the platform. Further on, you are forced to place and remove platforms as the player moves along to make a bridge across these spikes. In the current state, this is all you need to do for level 2. But in an earlier build, I made another obstacle which required you to place another horizontal platform on the wall. But as I feared, most players try to make the player do a wall jump, which is insanely difficult and maybe even impossible to pull off here. Since it drove people off, I decided to remove the obstacle altogether. Later on I introduced a few new platforms. I tried to make sure that every level which introduced a new platform or mechanic wasn't very difficult to keep the levels fair. I also made sure that if the player did nothing in such levels, the character would automatically walk into the unfamiliar platform and show the player exactly what they do. Unfortunately, you can't really do a lot of playtesting within a week's time, so maybe some of the levels are way too difficult to figure out. You can try the game out yourself by clicking the link in the description. If you have any feedback, please leave a comment below and tell me what you did or didn't like. Feedback is incredibly important, and I value any advice you can give me because it really helps me improve my future games. That's it for this week's game. Hopefully I'll be able to show you a different game next time.